As the Premier spoke with Mark Carney in Ottawa today, the BC and Alberta leaders both supported Canadian unity, but struck very different tones on the separatist group.
I described it as an old-fashioned word because we haven't had to use it for a long time. In my opinion, that is treasonous activity, and it needs to be called out. It needs to be stopped. Now, I'm not talking about debates that we have inside the country, among Canadians about how we order ourselves. I'm talking about crossing the border, soliciting the assistance of a foreign government to break up this country, and I don't think we should stand for it.
We also have to be realistic that 10 years under Justin Trudeau's government, our province was relentlessly attacked. Our economy was relentlessly attacked. So when you look at the polls, they suggest as many as 30% of Albertans have lost hope. That's about 1 million people. And I'm not going to demonize or marginalize a million of my fellow citizens when they've got legitimate grievances.
Mark Carney's meeting with the premiers also comes after warnings from both the U.S. President and Treasury Secretary over the Prime Minister's speech in Davos. So ahead of the crucial review of the North American trade deal, what did Mark Carney tell premiers about Canada's strategy with the U.S.? Wab Kinew is the Premier of Manitoba, and he joins me now. Premier, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me back.
I want to talk about the Port of Churchill. I want to talk about the state of trade, but I want to start with this sort of the issue that sideswiped the meeting today, and this is the meeting between the Alberta separatist movement and the State Department officials in the U.S. Is it appropriate for U.S. State Department officials to meet with the Canadian separatist movement?
Well, I think that we're in an unprecedented time as a country. Never before have you, at least not in our lifetimes, have you ever heard a president talk about taking over our country. And I think Canadians responded in a way that I'm proud of, which is never. We're never going to be the 51st state. I think that it's really important that we stick together. You know, it's an interesting conversation to try and have because you don't want to necessarily inflame people who are in Alberta in this case, or in another topic of referenda that we had today related to Quebec and the Parti Québécois. You don't want to inflame things there, but at the same time, you know, I'm coming from a province, Manitoba. You know, if you ask people, do you want to stay in Canada? It would be yeah and heck yeah would be the two questions on the ballot, sure. Right? And so, you know, the Trump administration, I don't think we should be surprised at anything that happens with them. And we as Canadians should be cognizant that as we head into the CUSMA review, there's going to be all sorts of stuff thrown at us to try and put us on the back foot. But we need to find a way as a country to be heading into these negotiations around the review on our lead foot and advocating for what we need for our economy and for our country.
When you look at, though, the news of this meeting, and who knows how serious it really was, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at everything the President has said, and the Treasury Secretary is talking, musing out loud about Alberta, maybe they could find a home in the U.S., do you see this as benign? Because the State Department says they normally meet with civil society groups. This is a normal course of practice. I don't know. Is this normal course of business?
No, this is not the normal course of business because this is not normal times. We are headed into a CUSMA review, which when this CUSMA deal was negotiated was thought to, you know, basically be a check mark. And now the stakes are very high. So I view this as part of a larger context where if you go back to the start of the year, Venezuela, Greenland, shots being you know, sent towards our Prime Minister. There's a lot being thrown at us to try and destabilize us and to make us worried like, oh, wow, maybe they don't need trade with Canada. They do. America needs trade with Canada. You look at our province in a state like Iowa. Iowa relies on the millions of weanlings, like pigs, that we send south of the border. There's huge interconnection right across that U.S.-Canada border. So I think we got to be mindful of the fact that a lot is going to happen over the next few months to try and make us negotiate from a weaker position. And we just have to be calm, we have to be strong, and we have to find a way to get back on the lead foot.
So what is your sense of where the footing is of the Canadian government in this? I know you're given an overview of how they're approaching and where things are, and I appreciate some of this is state secret. You will not or should not probably talk about on national television, but what's your sense of the strategy, the approach, and the plan that the federal government has in this constantly evolving situation to deal with the Trump administration?
Yeah, there is a strategy, first of all, and the federal government, the Prime Minister, Minister LeBlanc, they walked us through a lot of their thinking. They walked us through what they expect in terms of a timeline. They shed a bit of that light behind the scenes at some of the conversations they're having, both with the president but also with some of his officials, and that's all great. You know, in many ways, those parts of this engagement look more normal, right? You have officials, you have the head of the state, you know, you have others engaging and setting the stage for negotiation, which is all pretty typical. It's just that in the Trump era, this is all happening in a much more televised, entertainment-oriented kind of fashion.
They're a content machine, right? They're constantly generating content.
Absolutely.
The government. So when you look at all of that discord and noise that is in the public sphere on this, after today, is it your sense that that aligns with what's happening in the quieter parts of the relationship and the negotiations, or is that moving at a more typical and normal and comforting fashion? How would you describe it?
Well, part of Trump's style of negotiating is to just completely throw his opponent at the negotiating table off balance, and he does view it as an opponent when it comes to negotiating is the other part of it. So we got to find that balance. I think one of the things that you have seen, okay, when there were comments made against our prime minister and against you know, our country, when that flared up again within the past week or so, I thought it was pretty savvy that the federal government had Minister LeBlanc come out rather than the prime minister immediately. And then the prime minister, of course, did weigh in eventually. And I think that is part of how you have to respond to the Trump administration, is you can't try to keep up with them in a flame war. You can't try to go tweet for tweet or truth social for truth social. No. You have to take a step back and let their media cycle play out and then respond at the time and place of your choosing. So, you know, I think as we look ahead to another 6 months of this heading into the CUSMA review, the federal government's going to have to be very strategic about when and how they respond. And I think if they do that and perhaps weigh in with the sort of moral clarity that we saw from the Davos speech that the Prime Minister gave, if we're able to weigh in on moral clarity, where a Trump administration may not be able to, we might not be able to hang with them in a flame war, is the Trump administration going to be able to hang with Canada when it comes to the times of moral clarity?
Well, on that, there's been a lot of support for that speech. A lot of Canadians have rallied behind it. A lot of premiers have supported it. We are seeing some criticism, though, of the timing and the stage and the message that was delivered. How do you view it?
Well, I think, you know, I'm not sure if you're talking about voices within our country or the Trump administration criticizing it.
Yeah, just that it provokes the U.S. in a way that maybe isn't wise.
Yeah, and there's going to be people in the business lobby in our country and otherwise who say, you know, just keep your head down, negotiate a deal, and I would say no. We have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror as Canadians, as Canada at the end of this. And I think it's completely appropriate for our Prime Minister to give the speech that he gave at Davos. And I think everyone, including Donald Trump, should expect that we're still going to show up at the negotiating table and drive a hard bargain when it comes to the CUSMA review. This is who we are as Canadians. We're the adults in the room. We are people who can go into the corners at a hockey rink and then go out for beers at the end of the hockey game. And so, again, we know that Mr. Trump has game on. You know, and let's see where the CUSMA review leads to, because at the end of the day, we're still going to be neighbors, we're still going to be trading partners, and hopefully we can get past an era of the constant back and forth and back towards an era of making money together.
So just on that, given what you were told in there today, and the public noise and the reaction to the Davos speech, I mean, do you feel more confident about the direction of where things are going? Because it is very difficult to know from the outside, looking at whether there's progress, whether there's traction, whether things are moving in the right direction. What is your sense of directionally where things are happening on that detailed, granular conversation level?
Well, today I feel great. We had a great meeting. You know, the Prime Minister's working very well with the premiers. I was able to bring forward Manitoba's priorities on Churchill, on internal trade, on the justice system, and on ag and other topics, immigration as well, and that was great. But here's the thing. What does how we feel today have to do with what's going to happen tomorrow in the Trump era? So the biggest thing is that we got to ride the wave, right? So we're doing good things in the country right now. We're building up momentum. We're building up unity, and that unity is going to be absolutely essential. But we should not kid ourselves that any amount of progress today is the end of the story. We're going to have to keep doing this day after day, week after week, month after month. And if we do that, then I think we have a chance to go up against a very formidable negotiating machine on the other side.
Okay, but broadly, everyone's together. There is
yeah.
a strategy, and you're comfortable with the way they're handling it. Just who knows, because it's Donald Trump,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, look, I do want to touch on the other thing you raised today, this morning, about having a proponent, or close to having a proponent, a major energy company, I believe is the way you described it, as the lead on the Port of Churchill. What more can you tell us about this? Because I know you mentioned non-disclosure agreements because these will be sensitive commercial relations, but when will we know more, and what do we expect to see on this?
Well, it is very exciting for Manitoba. People have been talking about Churchill for 100 years, and now we're at a place where you've got a prime minister who's leading into the economy with urgency. You've got our team in our province ready to go, and now you have a major energy company stepping forward and saying, we're interested either in being the proponent or being an investor in creating a new proponent to move the project forward. And so for us, this is exciting times because it means this vision that we've been pushing is starting to crystallize into a real economic opportunity. The non-disclosure agreement thing is a good sign as well because it means they've been devoting their own time and resources to this evaluation of Churchill to the extent that they don't want to share their proprietary commercial information through us to potentially another competitor.
This is a Canadian energy company we're
Correct.
talking about? Okay,
Yeah.
are we talking like conventional energy, oil and gas? Are we talking...
I'd say conventional energy.
Okay, that's what we're talking...
Well, we have Manitoba Hydro as well, which
course.
could potentially play a role not only in lighting up the project, but maybe if there's a transmission line that gets built as part of this thing, you know, I would expect Manitoba Hydro to be involved in that, and that's renewable energy right there.
Right.
But it's exciting times for Churchill. It's exciting times for Manitoba. And this is a project that could help Western Canadian resources get to international markets, both in the EU, but also in Asia. This is something that could open up shipbuilding opportunities for the yards in Eastern Canada, including Ontario, Quebec. And this is something that could really help the Arctic by enhancing the logistical supports for that region.
But are we talking about, and I don't know how far you can go because of the non-disclosure agreement, an oil and gas company that wants to invest in this as a capital infrastructure project or to use this as an export terminal for their product?
Yeah, I think it's probably in line with all of that at this stage. We're, of course, a ways away from them announcing a project publicly, but I think what you're describing there is in line with what they're thinking and what we've been pushing, which is if we as Canada are looking to make good on what's been called Canada as the energy superpower,
Right.
at the same time that we're responding to the threats to our economy and to our freedom as Canadians from the Trump administration, well, here is a project that is in Western Canada that passes through the Arctic region. You can get to the European Union quicker than from other ports. You can get to Western India, where some of the refineries there are, more quickly than from the port of Vancouver, going through the Suez Canal. And so this has a lot of interesting things. So again, we're looking at the environmental piece with the marine conservation area. We're working with the Major Projects Office. We've got Indigenous governments working with us through the Manitoba Crown Indigenous Corporation. So a lot of those pieces that people have been talking about needing to come together for years are starting to come together. And I hope anyways, that that's part of the reason why the private sector is willing to start stepping off the sidelines and start to get involved.
Just one last question. You mentioned earlier, hockey, go for a beer after the game.
Yeah.
What about you and Doug Ford going for a Crown Royal? Have you settled that issue? Did you talk
We're
to the
still
Premier of
working on
Ontario?
it. You know, I did have a good conversation with Doug. I obviously made a heated rivalry reference in the closing press conference when we're sitting close to each other. But what I would say is I work for the workers in Gimli, Manitoba, right? And those are good Canadian jobs made by creating Canadian whiskey. I'd like to see something happen for the Ontario workers as well, too. Premier Ford has invested a lot into this. So if the parent company in this situation can give him a win that he can take back to the Ontario worker, you know, I think that's how that thing gets resolved. And hopefully we see that happen in the next few weeks.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, always appreciate the time. Thanks for coming in, sir.
Thanks so much.